It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
And we're back again. It is BS.show. Oh, man, here we go.
It's very close.
Man, I tell you what, bjshow.co, bjshow.co. If you want to watch the videos, which are actually just podcasts, they're not really videos. They are videos, but there's no moving images. Well, there's some, they move a little bit.
It's mostly just our voice, Brad.
Right.
And our logo.
bjshow.video. Okay, today is 3 weeks from Election Day.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say it's Amazon Prime Day, which is an important day.
3 weeks from Election Day. Okay. What's interesting is I thought that there would be tons of advertising for the Secretary of State. I don't think I've heard one ad. Have you heard anything for Secretary of State?
I haven't. No, I haven't heard any. And I'm guessing that folks are just I'm guessing some folks are doing print. And I think that we'll probably see some as we get real close. Remember, Secretary of State candidates don't have the same budget that a governor's candidate does or that Andrew Bailey and Will Scharf have.
Okay. There's 8 people on the ballot.
Correct. Yeah.
And this is obviously the primary, which means but pretty much whoever wins the primary is going to essentially become the Secretary of State.
Yep.
Because is there any viable candidate for the Democrats on this one?
No, I can't even. There's a woman who was a state rep from the liberal area, like Webster Groves Kirkwood, who's going to fill that ballot slot for Democrats.
So she's the sacrificial lamb, so to speak?
Correct, yep. She'll take their loss this year.
Now, would you want to do that? If someone said to you, let's say you lived in a very Democratic area, and they said, John, we need somebody to just be on the ballot for a Republican. Would you ever consider something like that?
Absolutely not. And I wrote a 3-part series for the Missouri Times in this back in 2022, Brad, which I'm quite proud of. And it's about candidates who run races when they know they're not going to win and why it's mostly based on vanity and ego. Now, there are some cases where it would make sense. So if you're this woman who has been a state representative, Barbara Pfeiffer, I believe is her name, and the upside of it, Brad, is that some folks, it's kind of like when Trudy Bush Valentine ran for Senate against Eric Schmitt. There's money to be made. So you will raise money from patsies and people who give every year to Democratic candidates. If you have a good online fundraising presence, you can raise money nationwide by saying, hey, I'm a progressive, I'm trying to flip the seat. Everybody gets paid. Your fundraiser gets a monthly retainer. They might get a monthly retainer plus a commission. You're able to hire staff. You're able to overpay for printing and other materials to get your friends paid, to get them a little grift. And there's a way to make money from it. But to me, it's, I'm not a fan, Brad, and you and I might disagree on this. I'm not a fan of running for a seat in which you legitimately have no chance to win.
Well,
let somebody else do it. Let somebody else in your party take the bullet.
Right. Okay. I sent you something yesterday. Also, this is sort of inside baseball, FCC stuff that I just wanted to talk about briefly, and I just want to make a comment on this. I own 3 stations. The station we're on, and 2 other stations. Okay. My competition is not other radio stations. To a certain degree, it is, but my competition is Meta and Alphabet, which includes all the different social media sites. Those are the ones, and quite honestly, those are the ones that are pretty much killing the newspaper industry. Once upon a time, a friend of mine who was in the newspaper industry told me that what the most profitable, let's go back 40 years. You know what the most profitable page in the newspaper business was? Our pages?
The obituaries.
Classified ads, because of the fact that if you figured out how much per column inch that those ads generated, it was far more, because once again, the entire page was revenue generating as opposed to a regular page which maybe had said 20 or 30% ads on it. Okay, so Craigslist came along and pretty much killed the classified ads, and now Facebook Marketplace has come along and pretty much killed Craigslist, although I never could quite figure out how Craigslist made any money. And quite honestly, I really don't know how Facebook Marketplace makes any money. Okay, having said that, The guy who was the FCC commissioner under Trump was a Republican. An interesting guy. His name was Ajit Pai. And what's interesting was he had a background, I believe, in college where he worked at a college radio station. And he had a little bit of a soft spot in his heart for broadcasters, okay? And he deregulated some of the things that we complained about for years, like, okay, this regulation, and to a certain extent, we are still governed by the Communications Act of 1934, which is what? 90 years ago, today's night, it's 2024, so 90-year-old legislation. Some things have been updated, but the majority of the rules and regulations still go back to 1934, okay? So what Ajit Pai was doing was he was essentially going through the rules and regulations and throwing out some things that he thought were stupid, and he got rid of some stuff. Now, and at that point in time, I believe the commission's made up of 5 people. It was 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. That shifted. Now we have 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans that run the FCC, and they're putting back in rules and regulations. And the broadcasters, and the National Association of Broadcasters specifically, is saying, guys, FCC, look, the broadcasters are already getting their butts kicked by social media, by all the electronic forms that are unregulated. And perfect example, if a politician calls me up and wants to go on the air today, I have to have them execute these forms. I have to take these forms. They have to sign them. I have to sign them. I have to put them up on the FCC database so people can go and look at that. If I buy advertising on Facebook or YouTube, I don't have to do squat. I just have to pay the bill, right? I send them my ad, I pay the bill, and it can be anything in the world. Okay, the reason I bring this up, I sent you this thing yesterday that it's talking about they're going back to the old rules for simulcasting. Yeah,
I wanted you to explain that because I didn't quite get it.
Well, simulcasting means that, let's say, you have Keishi and they have a sister station, The Point, and all of a sudden one day the general manager over there, John, says, you know what, we're just going to run Keishi on both stations. Okay, that's simulcasting. So in other words, you have the same programming on both stations. Okay, the FCC, through the years, through Ajit Pai, essentially relaxed those rules to the point where you can simulcast stations. Now they're going back the other way, and not that I'm picking on anybody, but immediately when I saw this, I thought to myself, wonder what's going to happen with Tracy.
Because she has multiple stations. She leases multiple stations and simulcasts on several of them, right?
Right. I think her main program, I think she's on 5 different stations. She's on 93.3, she's on 107.3, she's on, what's the station up? Hannibal
There's
Way.
one in Raleigh. Yeah, she has. The point is she has several.
Right. Okay. So I'm thinking to myself, what's she going to do? I mean, because of the fact that And once again, I'm not trying to pick on her. I'm essentially saying this is a deal where you're operating within the law, and all of a sudden the law changes, and you're going like, okay, what am I going to do now? Now, the problem is, I can tell this, unless you're Joy 99 or EMF, which is Educational Media Foundation, which is the giant Christian broadcaster all over the country, which has, I looked at it just the other day, on their current, if you go to the ecfa.org site, which is like the Better Business Bureau of churches and nonprofits, if you look at their assets, they are just a bit short of $1 billion with a B in assets. And all they do is run radio stations with God Squad music on it all across the country, okay? And they're not for profit, okay? So, and the same with them, because they're simulcasting all over the country. Now, I know that some people are going to say, well, the simulcast rules are intended for in markets. In other words, like the example I gave before, Keishi and The Point running the same programming on both stations would obviously be, okay, that's a no-no because of the fact that both of those stations are in the same market. But like with Tracy's station, she has overlapping coverage area. Now that she's got her new tower on 93.3, she's got a signal that goes up, that covers up into the area where her other station is up to the north. I believe that signal carries down to the south, down where she's got her 107.3. And if I'm not mistaken, it covers into downtown St. Louis where she's got another station, which is on AM. I'm going like...
Hey, you know what she should do, Brad? First of all, let me interrupt. First of all, and I know people are fascinated by this topic, but also I think she should add geofencing, which is totally real and not a made-up marketing term. Number 2, I think that we should isn't there didn't they say that there's a like a grace period? So don't these stations have the ability to, like, they got time? It's not like they have to flip over tomorrow, right?
Well, yeah, I think it was 6 months, wasn't it? What the article said, 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. So that's plenty of time. And Brad, why don't you teach a seminar on geofencing? And you could stand over the bridge, where Chesterfield becomes, and you could prove, okay, I know you guys think that for a good 40 square miles in St. Louis County, you can hear our station, but that's an optical illusion. We are geofenced, Brad.
John has a way of
It's true. I learned this from you. Geofencing is a real thing. There are geofencers that it's like a sport, they go out and it's old people who are empty nesters and they're like, we're going to geofence. Oh, wait, that's geocaching, right? And that was replaced by pickleball. The sad thing about playing pickleball at Chesterfield Mall is you don't get 107.1 clear as day at the mall, Brad. It's just an illusion. Every day that I drive by and I have 107.1 on in Chesterfield, it's an illusion. I'm just hearing you in my head, Brad. Anyway, I agree. You're going to teach a geofencing class. It's going to be fantastic. And they should shorten the grace period to 0 days because that will drive sales for geofencing classes. Brad, thank you for the lesson on simulcasting. And we should also point out that you were the first station not only to have geofencing, but you are the first station to have a trimulcast, Brad. You want to explain what that was?
Well, you remember the old days. It was the old days of the BJ show or the BS show, whichever show it was.
It was a trimulcast. You were the first station to do a trimulcast.
Right. We had the station. Shelley and I were on Westplex 107.1, Crap, and KSLQ all at the same time, which was sort of interesting. But see, once again, John.
I'm trying to get you off track, Brad. I mean, we could do another 6-minute dissertation on simulcast laws in the FCC, but go ahead.
That's John's subtle way of saying, this is stupid, it's boring, we need to move on. So,
hey, Brad, can we talk more about the flight patterns at Lambert Airport and how the runways are named? I know one listener will be fascinated by that. Do
you know through the years when I've talked about that, do you know how many people have said to me, I never knew that about the runways? See, that's something that people don't really realize. Once again, it's one of these things that and what's funny about it is if you watch certain movies, you'll see this mistake made in movies and you'll go, nobody on that movie is a pilot and understands, for example, it's like every once in a while you'll see a movie where it's in America and they show like the dashboard of a car and they'll show that the radio is like on 92.4 and you go like, hold on a minute now, that's not right.
That can't happen.
Right, it's because in the United States, the decimal numbers are always odd, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Whereas in other countries, that's not the case. You can have even numbered frequencies as the decimal equivalent. But I have, see, should I briefly explain the runway situation or should I just bypass that?
No, let me get a punchline in first. You know who's going to mention it? A Bridgeton resident named Eric Schmitt. Now, he submitted his comments to the RNC of what he's going to say, but I think we should have him scrap it because a station in St. Louis talked about the Bridgeton runways, and he's going to mention it during his RNC speech tonight, Brad.
God, the old days of the Bridgeton Air Defense. God, I'm telling you, they were
baddies. They were definitely the baddies.
They're the ones. There's the ones that started the whole 1% city sales tax thing. That would never have happened without the Bridgeton Air Defense because nobody knew that. Nobody knew that rule. Okay, so we don't want to talk about that. We'll move on to other things. Okay, can you wait for the debate between Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance? I mean,
it's going to be fantastic.
I mean, is that going to be like? I mean,
now, do you think that'll really happen?
Oh, supposedly she's already said she's in it. Matter of fact,
okay.
Here it is. Kamala Harris. I'll read the story. Kamala Harris congratulates J.D. Vance, hopes that the two can meet at VP debate. Vice President Kamala Harris called Senator J.D. Vance, Ohio, whom former President Trump chose as his running mate Monday, and congratulated him after the announcement. Vice President Harris reached out to Senator Vance and left a message to congratulate him on his selection. Welcome him to the race and express her hope that the two can meet in the vice presidential debate proposed by CBS News.
That's nice. That's nice of her to reach out.
If you've ever seen J.D. Vance, the guy can talk. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
The guy, and what's the interesting thing? I heard this yesterday 42,000 times. It's the first time that a millennial has been essentially suggested, are appointed, or whatever you want to call it, selected to possibly become a national elected official. We've never had any millennials.
I know. Like, what? I mean, first of all, what a sad state for our country where we're embracing millennials, Brad. I'm a Gen X guy, so I'm way older than the cutoff. So, I mean, you know, a moment of remembrance of Gen X, and I guess we've just been passed by, Brad. Let's make this all about us. Well, I mean, you're not a Gen X guy, but let's just make this about Gen X.
I don't mean to. You know, I already talked about how I got a call yesterday from Mary Elizabeth Coleman. You know, I'm like, hey, you know who called me yesterday? Mary Elizabeth Coleman. But I shouldn't tell this story. But last night, my phone went off about 11 o'clock, and it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered the phone. I go, hello? And he says, Brad? I go, yes. Brad Hildebrand? I go, yes. This is J.D. Vance.
Ooh.
J.D. Vance, he says, I'm a little concerned about 2 issues. Can you help me on this? Because I think that this might come up in any of the debates I have. And I go, yeah, what are they? He says, can you explain to me what simulcasting is? And can you explain to me how they designate runway numbers at the airport? And I said, JD, no problem, dude. And I gave him the 5-minute primer in each one. And he hung up and he said, right before he hung up, he says, Brad, man. I said, I go, you know what? I'd love to have some position in your cabinet. And he said, well, we'd love you to have it at Department of Transportation because we know you're an ex-traffic reporter, but you're a straight white guy. We can't have that. I said, okay.
Yeah. And you said, how do you know I'm a straight white guy? And then you winked at him on FaceTime.
John.
And then you also pointed out that and he's like, listen, Brad, I listened to your 20-minute deep dive on the P-51 Mustang, and it was fascinating. And I was the one listener that didn't fall asleep, and I want to offer you the Department of Defense cabinet post. And you said, great, I will put on a dress and I will be your DEI hire.
Man, every day it's to the point where it's like, okay, how many times can John make fun of me today? Okay, what's that Shakespearean play? How many times can John cut Brad down? Let me count the ways, right?
And because if you were not strong enough to take a joke, I wouldn't joke with you, Brad. Hey, you know what? I don't even know where to begin with all the things that have been said that are just wrong here.
Oh, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
I don't even know where to start from all of the things that have been said that are just wrong.
You almost got the quote right.
I hope when Mary Elizabeth says something about the convention, you interrupt her with her own quote.
So is that okay for tomorrow then?
I think it'd be great. Have her come on and talk about the convention. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'll call her today and see if we can set it up for tomorrow because I think it'd be interesting to have someone on the ground, especially someone. I don't think do you think she's ever been to a Republican convention before?
Yeah, I think maybe she went 4 years ago. I don't think she went in 2016, but she might have gone in 2020. But we'll see. It might be her first time. It might not.
Okay, John, say goodbye.
Bye. See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?